Welcome to another series, Ryan's Success series. We're teaching you how to become successful. And what we're going to focus on for this series of videos is how to create a mindset that's towards success, that's going to help you achieve success, a success mindset. What we're going to start with this very first video is talking about perspective and how important perspective is. A lot of the times we think that perspective isn't really that important, that a lot of successful people are built off of the habits and the things they do. That is true, but you do have to understand and recognize the importance of mindset in the role of cultivating and creating successful people. Why? Because if you imagine your life as a series of events, these events happen to you. And then what does your brain do? Your brain thinks about them in a certain way, and that leads you to have a certain outcome, a certain belief, and take eventually a certain action. This is a very high level view, but let's imagine if something bad happened to you at work. Let's say your boss gave you extra work to do that you didn't ask for, and now you have to do this massive project, and you're super unhappy about it. We can think about, and I want you to think about as well, all the different mental processes that are happening in your head as you're thinking about this kind of issue of you getting more work. Do you say like, oh, why do I get this? It's so unfair. I don't deserve this. Those are very common things that a lot of people tend to say to themselves, but it's actually inhibiting them from reaching new levels of success, primarily because their mind is wired in the wrong way. And the good news is you can rewire it, but it just takes some intentionality, some just thoughtful kind of approaches with different mindset models as what we're going to go over today in this video. This is something I've personally seen years and years of just working, right? And it's really built up this way of how I think that's different from other people and how I perceive opportunity, how I perceive failure, how I perceive setbacks and working hard and all these things. And it allows me to work harder and to keep going when a lot of people, other people give up. And this is really what is missing, because if you look at a lot of successful people, yes, they build up a lot of skills for sure. But if you were to take a lot of them and set them from ground zero again, you would notice that they would become successful faster than a lot of other people. And there's a multitude of reasons for that. But one of the reasons is something that they can't be taken away from them is their mindset of how they view opportunity, how they view things in a different way. That's fundamentally what helps them achieve success. So let's get down into a little bit of the details here. Perspective is so important because I've talked about many different things on this channel, including failure, working hard, and how success requires a big combination of those two things for a long period of time. So we now can understand that perspective is really what's going to help keep you in the game for longer. When you have a good perspective on the world and a bad perspective on the world, and I'm not talking about positive and negative, I'm just talking about in the terms of you output, input. So for example, a really common approach that a lot of people may have when they think about things is that if they work really hard towards a goal and they don't achieve that goal, they'll think, oh, that goal wasn't worth it, I'm not worth it, I suck, all these things, and they're not going to set another goal after that. But if you can take a step back and take, a better view of the situation and a really more objective one, that's really what successful people are. They tend to just be more objective and realize certain truths. Instead of going down these deep rabbit holes of negative thinking and a lot of self-doubt, they instead choose to be more objective about the facts. Well, how much effort did I really put in? And they be honest with themselves. This is something that's so difficult for a lot of people because nobody will actually just be honest with themselves. Okay, how much work did I really put in? Did I really try my best? Okay, even if I did those two things, how long was I really trying for? Because a lot of these things that you see, all these overnight success, all these super successful people, it takes years of trying your best, trying your hardest and failing and doing it again and again and again. And successful people understand that. And that all comes from perspective. Your perspective is built off a lot of things, but you need to understand that success is going to take time. Success is going to take a lot of failures, no matter who you are. You could be the most intelligent person in the world. You could be the smartest, the most capable of anybody. And these facts will still stay true. You may have less failures. You may have to work a little bit less hard, but you will still have to do those things. And it's still going to feel hard. It's still going to suck. Those are fundamental truths. Once you have these fundamental truths included as part of your perspective, now you begin to look at the world in a much more objective way of a series of these different fundamental truths and how well they're being applied. Now you start to understand why a lot of successful people are successful is because they put in large amounts of hard work for many years on end without seeing much result and seeing a lot of failure and pushing past a lot of obstacles that a lot of average people would fall to. So we understand now that this perspective thing is really what not only makes people successful, it's what allows them to continue to be successful. Because the world is not a stagnant place. It will continue to throw things at your way. Once you deem yourself successful, you will continue to have obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. And so really the definition of success is how well can you keep hopping those obstacles, fixing them, resolving them, moving on to the next thing, and then just doing that again and again and again. And a lot of issues that I've personally seen with the bad perspective is that you get in a lot of mental ruts, and this wastes a lot of energy because you start to become, depressed, or you think that a lot of terrible things about yourself, and this really inhibits your self-growth. Yes, we can't be optimistic all the time, but yes, optimism does help in some cases. And it would actually be better to be delusionally optimistic than it would to be delusionally pessimistic. Because the delusionally pessimistic person is completely depressed, and depressed people don't really do much work. But the delusionally optimistic person just keeps trying and trying and trying. I'm not trying to glorify either of those mentalities, but I want to focus on the output. Who is actually doing stuff, right? The optimistic person. So I want you all to be rational thinking people, but understand that this perspective is going to be the key thing that ties you back towards the actual actions you will take for success. Having a more balanced perspective of the world and understanding how difficult it really is to become successful and how much work it actually does take will allow you to continue to do the work because you understand that this is part of the process. There is nothing unique about this. There is nothing different. It's something that everybody has to go through. It's almost like a rite of passage. If you went to the store and you're going to buy something and it said $5 on it, right? You would expect to pay the $5 to buy that thing. But how come when it comes to success, we understand the price we have to pay is hard work, but nobody wants to pay that, yet they still want the success? You need to expand your perspective to make you realize that this is just the price you have to pay. And once you do that, you start to detach all these negative emotions from hard work, from failure, from all these things, because what really you understand, okay, this is just part of the process. This is just part of the process. Are those things still going to suck? Of course they're going to suck. They're going to suck terribly. They're going to hurt you. They're going to be absolutely horrendous. You're never going to want to go through those again. But you will now have this grounding understanding, grounding belief of that this is just the norm if I want to become successful. And that will allow you to push through those times with a lot of other things that we're going to talk about. But I just wanted to make this video to really highlight the fact that perspective is the foundation for a lot of things. And that the way you view the world, which can be changed, is really going to push you towards success because it will make you last longer in these really hard situations where a lot of people will give up when they're faced with a lot of failure. And that is, in the end, the lasting longer is really what will make you successful. If you guys have any questions, put them in the comments down below. We're going to be going again into the next part of this series, so make sure you join for that and subscribe for more.